Hey folks, Rick Berube here with Pedro Rachet from the Southwest office, real estate extraordinaire. All right, today, well, let's get started and just talk about, tell me a little about yourself, how long you've been doing this good stuff and all that, like in real estate.
Okay, so let's do this. I've been in real estate one facet or another since 1995. I started off as a loan officer. And then in 2006, I also was licensed or received my license as a real estate agent. So I've been doing this for about 28 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Long time.
Long time, right? Yeah, and doing it well, I might add, right?
Well, I appreciate that.
Having closings and so, yeah. And you're still a little involved in the loan part too, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm still currently licensed as a loan officer, although I don't do as much as I used to do. I used to do a lot of loans. Back before the great crash of 2008-9, I was doing about $26 million in loans. And one of the reasons I actually got my license in 2006 was because I had a hard time agents that would not do business at the level that I wanted. Mm-hmm. And so I had to jump into that fray, and that's the reason I got my license.
Yeah, and you get a little bit more control, get people their loans and so forth, right?
Yeah, well, the problem was that everyone was a little lazy because everyone qualified, and they didn't want to to fight for the house because every house was like 5 or 6 offers deep.
Right.
So it was a tough fight. So
it was crazy times back then.
Yeah, it was.
And now it's so much better because they really tightened it up, the lending. You don't have like people own 7 or 8 homes. They own their home, maybe one more. It was crazy times back then.
Oh, it was nuts. Just want to make sure this doesn't go off. The times are changing. What I see coming is, first I think I better put this into perspective. Rates have gone up 500%, Rick, in the last year and a half. We went from a 2.5% rate to we're cresting 8, just about. And Jerome Powell is very adamant that he's not going to stop. And although the Federal Reserve out of Canada is the only one that has paused rates, which there's a glimmer of hope there that we might see that stop. But that being said, have you heard about golden handcuffs?
I've heard that, but I can't remember what. I've heard somebody say that, but I don't remember what it was for.
Yeah. Well, I kept hearing in the media, oh, sellers, they're not going to sell. They've got a 3 or better rate. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. That's why we have low inventories.
Right.
Well, something didn't sit right with me on that, so I did some homework. And what I did was I looked to see with Fred, right, the Federal Reserve out of, I think it's Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And what they said was, and I looked at all the graphs and all that, but I went specifically I wanted to know the actual amount of people that had a subpar 3%. So I looked that up. I know I'm kind of crazy. I'm a little analytical, so it goes with my being a loan officer too. Mm-hmm. And what I found was fascinating. Get this, 14% of all the 92,250 million households have a subpar 3%. So that was cool. So now I knew how many households in percentage wise had that. And so that led me to the golden handcuffs. So the golden handcuffs are, well, I'm not selling because I got a subpar 3%. So that's what everyone was pushing. That's the narrative, right? Then I went, well, how about everything else? So I started looking to see the other percentages. But the one that really blew me out of the water, and I'm thinking it might blow you out of the water. Do you know how many households have no mortgage? 0.
30%?
34%. Good work.
Thank you.
34% of all the households do not have a mortgage. And then down on the bottom, there was an asterisk, and it says 12 million of the whole 92,250,000 have 12 million of those homes are without power. And I went, wait a minute. There's 12 million homes in the whole of the United States that don't have their utilities on, and that they're vacant. They're saying vacant. And I went, whoa, that's a lot. And I went, wait a minute. So, from what I understand, within different graphs in that same narrative, there's all this equity in the property built up since 2009-10, people purchasing. And the narrative is, hey, you've got golden handcuffs, so they're not going to sell. I just proved the narrative to be wrong.
Right.
And the reason it's wrong is because you got too many households with too much to lose. If you have 34% of the households that are sitting with no mortgage and the property values start to go down 10 or 15%, how soon will it be that they make up their mind to start selling?
Right.
Well, me as primarily listening to this is where I'm going with this. I'm not trying to be negative at all. This is actually positive for you. The reason I got excited about that, and I just reactivated my mojo and the whole bit to start prospecting. I've been prospecting hard for the last couple of weeks. I'm going to tell you the why I stopped. But I see that there is there's acres and acres and acres of diamonds, to quote Earl Nightingale. There is all kinds of opportunity right now with those 34% of households that are vacant. And then if you look at the same chart, you've got the ones that go from 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, that encompass, if you add them all together, less than 14%. How much do you have? Right? 76% of all the households are above 3%.
Right.
So what does that tell me? That the picking's good.
Right. I think, what is it? I think 40% or more of the mortgages are above at 6% or more right now, something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even you can go on and say, look, historical averages are showing that that 7.5% has been, since they've been recording mortgages, about the average, right? Right now we're cresting 7.5 and 8. And when I started my career back, before there was round wheels,
20 years ago.
Yeah, whenever that was, I had a refi boom at 9.5%.
Right.
And because I spoke Spanish, still speak Spanish, I had all the LOs send me over the referrals so I can help those people refinance because they couldn't communicate very well with them. And I had lines out the door every day from people that had a 10.5, 11.5, 12.5. I saw one at 16%. Isn't that crazy? So right now is where I want to give you some encouragement. You're hearing about the golden handcuffs. People are telling you right now, you know what? They're saying people are not going to sell because of this and that. I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to prosper. I'm not going to go out and do open houses. I'm not doing that because why would they sell? That's a bunch of hooey. All right? Because as soon as the pillow talk kicks in, and you guys know what pillow talk is? That's when you're laying in bed and your wife won't stop talking to you, or your significant other won't stop talking to you about how she saw on, or he saw on Zillow, and the house just went down 12%. And they want to have that conversation. Because here's the bottom line. Look at it this way, guys. The average person, not my statistic, Wall Street Journal statistic, can't come up with $500.
If it's an emergency, yeah.
Cannot do it.
I saw that too.
So imagine these people that right now, to qualify, need $80,000 in income. That's what they need. The $420,000, $450,000 house is about a $2,800 to $3,500 payment, roughly. Just to give you a wide berth there. You can do your own math, HOAs, communities, whatever. Yeah. But think about it this way. If those people, that's what Wall Street Journal is talking about, the average, the masses, can't come up with $500 because they're strapped. The payment's gone up $1,000, right? And then here's the kicker. Between the year that they've gone up 5%, 89% has been the increase in payment, right? Depending on location. You could say maybe 79% to 89%. So we're looking at payments that have gone up significantly. Call it $1,000. Now these people that can't come up with a $500 on a one-time emergency, they're having to cuff up with $1,000. I don't know if you noticed. Have you noticed there's inflation?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah. So
especially in the last 3 years.
Right. So with that, so here's your encouragement. You know, you're sitting there looking at your office wall. It's the darkness that doesn't stop. Where am I going to get my business? And you're thinking about that day and night if you're a real estate agent right now. All right. Some of you may be lucky that you're sitting on 3 or 4 leads that are really good and you're showing how you're kind of busy. But I'm guessing most of us are thinking to ourselves, oh my gosh, this is getting crazy. Who's
Market's handling it.
Yeah.
It's steady, but it's not really fast right now.
Yeah, it's slow. And we're going into the slow season. Susan, wouldn't you agree? I mean, right now is the slow season. So where do you get your leads right now? And I'm talking about cheap leads. I'm talking about not buying Zillow, not buying this, not buying that, looking for cheap leads. Well, it's the old school Mike Ferry. I'm here to tell you, it's getting on the phone, making your calls, and humping that phone for 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, right? Giving you another 3 days to do whatever you want to do, and that will help you get over the top. And if you've got people that are having that pillow talk, coming back to the pillow talk and saying, you know what, we've got 12% loss, what happens when it's a 22% loss? And the problem with using percentages, and that's why the government so lovingly uses percentages all the time, because most people don't know how to do the math.
Right.
So they say, oh, so what, it went down 20%. Well, what is 20% on 400,000? That's 80 grand.
80 grand, yeah.
So now if their equity positions are sitting at 100, they've lost 80% of their equity. So when people can't save $500, think about their savings ability. Take a second. Watch this. So your savings ability, if you can't come up with $500, but let's assume that you can save $500. Let's turn it on its head. Let's be positive. So what's $500 times 12?
6 grand.
So they can save $6,000. Now they work a lifetime. Let's call it 10 years. They were able to save it for 10 years. Let's just use that. That's $60,000. So someone would be willing to lose in the next year or 2 years $60,000, which would take them 10 years to save. Think about that. A lot of the agents that I personally have known that are successful, they make $10,000, $20,000 on a deal. So for them, that's not that big a deal. But if you're working and you're making $80,000 a year and you can only save $500, trust me when I tell you that pillow talk is going to get harder and harder for the one that doesn't. It could be the man or the woman or whatever that decides they want to sell because they don't want to lose their savings. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting way to look at it for sure. I think that I read that Wall Street Journal thing, but I'm not sure. They kind of. I agree with them most of the time, but I'm not sure if I agree 100% with the $500 if there's a major emergency. But I don't know. I don't do that kind of math, so they would know better than me.
Well, then let's talk about how people are racking up those credit card payments.
That's definitely happening. It's the highest.
Is that happening? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's use that. So now we've had the highest use of credit cards right now that we've ever known since the recording of the use of credit cards.
Right.
Right.
What is it? 74 trillion?
It's trillions.
Yeah.
It is insane. Okay. Now we hold as in the U.S. a big chunk of that. So once people start, let's say there's a downturn. They said that it's a 3.8% that we're still in the black when it came to the work, the jobs.
Yeah.
We're still at 3.8 in the positive. Okay. Well, let's say, and I don't know if you believe this, but maybe government isn't really forthright with the numbers. Maybe they played around with those numbers, and we're really in a recession, and that number isn't correct, but let's use it. What happens when that goes down below into the negative territory? And what happens when business owners who right now are being pinched because the banks are starting to contract with credit, right? So if they're raising the interest rate for us in getting a mortgage in our industry, what do you think's happening in the commercial industry? Have you heard about what's happening in commercial?
Yeah.
Do you know how that works?
Yeah, it's a little crazy.
It's crazy. Well, most people don't understand this, but you don't get a 30-year loan with a commercial if you're lucky. I mean, some people are experts, so forgive me if I butcher this. But let's say a 10-year, 7-year loan. Well, they were getting these loans at what? 3, 4%? What happens now when they go to refinance? Do you think they're going to have a problem with these rates? I say they are. And so if they are, that means their credit is contracting. That means they're going to pay more for the building. And they're going to have less money for what? Payroll, goods and services. So if that happens, then we're going to have a contraction in that sector, which affects us. But going back to the positive, where do you think we're going to get all our new clients, right? So my whole thing is, if we're going into this contractionary period,
You can even call it a recession.
a recession, I think we're in, but let's call it a period of contraction, where as agents, professional agents as we are, where are we getting the clients? Well, we're going to get the clients from the pool of people that have equity. And some of those may decide to relocate and get out of whatever metropolis you happen to be living in, or they may decide to retire early, or they may want to do a lateral move, but as Troy has mentioned, they may want, let me get my thoughts here. What Troy said was that people may want to take out their equity, so that way, when they're taking out their equity, they're also able to keep the same payment because they're going to downsize because of the empty nest syndrome and all the other stuff.
And even pay some of their credit cards off.
Yeah, pay off the credit cards, which is where I was going.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's not like they're not going to buy a house. They may do the lateral move. I don't see them going up in move because the payment differential will be too much.
Right.
Now, what is the most affected area right now? What do you guys see as the most effective area right now?
Probably the below average sale price.
Well, wouldn't you agree that their average price point is about $430 right now?
Yeah.
It's about $430.
In Las Vegas, yeah.
And so if you have to make $80,000, let's use that number. If you have to make $80,000 a year in gross income to qualify for that, and it's about what, $3,200 payment, whatever it is, okay? And right now our DTI ratios, debt to income ratios, are about 47% national, 46% national, something like that. Don't quote me, it's about that. The point is, when it tops the 50, that's when conventional has a hard time approving people, right? So if the feds are going to raise the rate, what's going to happen with the DTI? Nothing. It stays the same. It has to be below 50. But what happens to the sales price?
Has to keep coming down.
That they can buy.
Yeah, I also read in one of the financial publications that across the country, every time the rate comes down a point, 2.5 million people more now qualify to buy the average sale price in their marketplace. It has to come down a point. So
that's 100%.
Yeah.
And that's the good news. See, right now, I am not convinced that these are the proper sales prices for our communities. I think we're experiencing the effects of the low rate, the effects of Wall Street coming in and buying all our properties and beating us out. I don't know if you guys ever got upset, but it drove me bananas when I had BlackRock,
yeah,
and and all these subsidiaries of BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, and all these others that were buying the property. I was trying to get my family into a home, and then there were cash offer would come up at the last minute, and that family couldn't buy their their choice home, they had to choose something that was inferior.
Yeah.
Drove me bananas. Well, when you have all these entities that have stopped buying, for all intents and purposes, right? So that's why we're looking at a possible downturn in the market. Then you've got the inflation going up. Then you got the interest rate going up. Well, I think if we can get our prices to what they should be, which in my opinion is an LTV, a DTI at about 36%. And when I started, FHA didn't want you to go over the front end ratio. They wanted it at 26, 28%.
20, I remember those days, yeah. 28%.
And if you had
28, 36.
28, 41.
Yeah.
So if you had a back end ratio of 41, dude, the underwriter was looking at you sideways. What are you doing? They still got the utilities. They still have food. They still have this. Now we're okay with 50%. That's not including all the utilities. So look, no one can convince me right now that we are at proper values.
Yeah.
All right. So that being said, I want to talk to you about a little bit about what my journey has been. Okay. And one of the greatest moments in my life, I'll never forget it, is when Aldo Martinez, good man.
Good man.
Good man.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. He invited me to go to a Mike Ferry event. And this isn't to push Mike Ferry at all, but I want you to hear a true story, something that changed me. And it was the year 2013. By the way, you were there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah. And I was sitting in the crowd and to keep a promise to Aldo. And I was listening to this man. And by the time it was over, I just knew. I knew that this was the only way that I had to me available. I couldn't buy my leads. I didn't have the money. And things were rough. And I had been doing successful. Matter of fact, I turned 40 in 2008. I lost every nickel I ever made by 2009.
Mm.
Everything I worked for, all these hours, everything I sacrificed for, the millions of transactions that in money that I did, the thousands of clients that I helped, all gone.
I remember those days.
Yeah. So Aldo recruited me and he says, you need to come check out Mike Ferry. I checked out Mike Ferry and then I went to work. And this is a formula I want to share with you when you're looking into the darkness. And I'm going to write a book on this, but you're welcome to write your own book on this. So here we go. It's this four-year plan, and the way it works is like this. It's 4 years that you give like you would to a university to prospecting. I know a lot of you guys want to throw up in your mouth right now. I get that, but watch this. 4 years. Then it's 4 years, 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, and you dedicate yourself to doing that you won't, for all intents and purposes, after the 4th year, you'll just have to maintain, barring a black swan event, your clientele.
Your client list at that point.
That you've done. And I can tell you, I did that. I called for a little longer than that. It was like 6 years. And now I'm in a position that, and I recently went back, and this is why I told you guys I'd go back to this, to start a prospect again, because I'm thinking we're back to the black swan event, but to go back to that 4-4-4. So if you 4 years, 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, if you prospect, and that prospecting isn't necessarily calling on the phone, although that's what Mike Ferry was teaching along with some other things, but you can use that same time sitting in open houses. The point is that,
or door knocking,
but the point is that you're using 4 hours of your day, half your day in essence, for 4 days a week to look actively for business. And then after that, once you've got your 4 years in, from that point on, you will no longer have to prospect. You will just maintain. You'll go into the Buffini way of doing it, which is calling your clients, paying visits, taking to lunch, having parties, doing all the drop-bys are beautiful. You know what? I don't know about you, but whenever someone knocks at my door, it freaks me out. Doesn't it? Doesn't it freak you out? It freaks me out. I'm like,
I think, what has my wife bought now on Amazon?
Yeah. Well, what are they stealing off my front porch?
Right.
So at the end, that's what I
That's the
wanted to
formula.
help you guys to look into the darkness, because there are times when you're looking at your pipe and there's nothing in that pipe. And unfortunately, every year, you don't know what you're going to do in the following year. As a real estate agent at loan officer, all you know is that you have your license and you have a good work ethic and you know your business. But what you don't know is what business you'll have for the next month or 2 months down the road. Most agents, including the top producers, they as well, you see these guys doing 20, 40, 50 million a year. But you know what? If you really have a candid conversation with them, which I've had, they have no idea who they're going to close 3 months hence. None. So if you want to be the guy that's closing the same production, take their business. Take it. It's there.
I like it. 4 hours, 4 days for 4 years, and then we have. And I know I'm a company guy, but we have a great tool called the Virtual Agent Center. You pipe them all in there, you set them all up, and you build a gigantic network. I agree. I did the same thing when I did Mike, because I didn't have any money, and I went on this was 1991, and I prospected for 10 years, at least 3-4 hours a day, until I became a full-time coach. And then, that was with Mike for a long time. Well, awesome, my man. I really appreciate you. Any final words you want to leave these lovely people in Facebook land?
Yes, thanks for your time, but I'm going to leave you with this. Life hits you hard, sometimes so hard that it'll knock you down. When that happens, grab that adversity, grab that challenge, put it on as armor. Use it to your advantage. Help others, and you'll see that what happens in your life, as soon as you put others first, will be glorious.
All right. Well, thank you. It's your time, my man. Awesome.